full-day kindergarten, all under review. Plus,
they should have jumped on it right away, but most of the side street, only one car can get down there.
better late than never. The city is planning a snow clearing blitz this weekend. And a celebration of craft beer returns to the Evergreen Brickworks for the 4th year running. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. There's some uncertainty tonight about what the province's schools might look like in September. The province is warning school boards to hold off hiring teachers to fill vacancies. CBC's Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story and the reaction.
It's the time of year when kids are thinking of March break, and school boards start planning for next year. Typically, schools begin hiring now to replace teachers who will retire in June.
We normally would have information by now about what the numbers would look like and how much money we had to spend.
But the message from the Ford government is not so fast. This new memo from the Deputy Minister of Education tells school boards across Ontario to defer filling retirement vacancies and exercise prudence in making hiring decisions.
I'm so excited, I run all the way home from school.
This comes with schools already bracing for funding cuts. The government is talking about lifting the caps on class sizes in the primary years and changing full-day kindergarten.
Some decisions will have to be made, and some of them will be surprising to parents, I think, because many things that people think are given may not be a given at the end of this. We have to see.
The letter also points to the province's hiring freeze and says school boards may wish to freeze hiring too. What would the impact be?
I think it means fewer or larger class sizes. That means fewer teachers, which equals less for kids in terms of providing them with a good education.
We have a school system right now in Ontario that's already pretty stripped to the bone.
The NDP education critic says the Ford government needs to decide what its priorities are.
What's clear to me is that their priorities are not education, they are not children.
Education Minister Lisa Thompson was not available for an interview. In a statement, she says, quote, "We need to take a hard look at how school boards spend their money." All of this is really just a hint of the turmoil that's likely in store for the province's school system. Contracts with all the education unions expire this summer, and all the signs suggest that there will be labor unrest during the school year that begins next September. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
The fight over autism funding arrived on Doug Ford's doorstep today. Parents and autism advocates held a rally in front of the Premier's Etobicoke constituency office. Changes announced by Minister Lisa MacLeod earlier are meant to clear off the wait list of 23,000 children over the next 18 months. The province says more children will get coverage, but there has been a huge backlash from families worried about how they'll afford therapy for their kids.
I'm a single dad. My son has severe autism. I'm not going to be able to afford $60,000 a year in therapy for my son. I'm going to have to remortgage my house to even give my son even just a little bit of a hope.
What he's doing is just a nonsense, stupidest, toxic decision. Is going to ruin our children's life. And here are parents crying and standing in, doesn't have guts to come up and talk to us.
The province's new autism funding changes come into effect April 1st. Well, a traffic stop in Oshawa turned into a high-speed chase last night.
Air 1, I have this, guys. If you guys want to back off, I've got this.
The police helicopter picked up the pursuit. Officers had first tried to stop the driver after he was spotted swerving in and out of his lane. This happened just after midnight. Police tracked the car on the 401 all the way from Oshawa to Scarborough.
They're bailing. Driver's bailing out here. I'm staying with the driver.
And you can see that driver running through the neighborhood, hopping fences and trying to hide on a porch. Eventually, officers on the ground closed in. One was able to tackle him. The 24-year-old driver is charged with cocaine possession with the intention of trafficking, fleeing police, and several other charges. He had passengers in the car, but they were released. We've had at least a few days break since our last big snowfall, and yet many Torontonians are still having a hard time maneuvering around the snowbanks, especially on side streets. Chris Glover has more on the city's plans to clear the roads.
With hefty snowbanks, it's difficult to drive down some side streets in a news van, let alone a delivery truck.
My days are longer. I'm doing I'm doing 12-hour days instead of 8-hour days.
Because most of our deliveries are on the side streets, as you can see. So, if like we had to cancel like 2 days this week after the storm because of the side street, we kept getting stuck.
In response, tomorrow the city is launching a snow removal operation.
Priority streets are those that have been deemed, a safety risk for first responders.
I mean, here's a bus coming down the street right now, and there's like, snowbanks on both sides. So you got to maneuver into the side. I'm a bit of a cowboy, so I don't mind doing that. But if you're not, then it's, I guess it's precarious.
As this cowboy busts up the last of the ice on his front walk, he thinks the city is behind.
It's a bit late. But I guess, if there's some streets that are worse than this, I mean, it's fine now. But 2 days ago, I mean, there was like, I don't know, probably a half a foot of snow at some parts.
The snow this winter has been relentless. January 28th's massive storm dumped about 30 centimeters of snow, more in one day than a typical full month of January. The average snowfall for February is 24 centimeters. This year, 43.7 centimeters. Do you think that part of the problem is how much snow we've gotten this year?
No, this is Canada. We're used to snow.
In snow removal blitzes in past years, the city has used blowers, loaders, and dump trucks. This is the first time this year because there's so much snow and cold weather is in the forecast.
We can't rely on Mother Nature to sort of help us with this. It's not going away.
All that snow will be taken to one of 5 city facilities, basically vacant lots ready for heaps of snow. This winter, people have blasted social media with complaints of cars blocking streetcar lanes, parked in the wrong place because of all the snow. To make room for snow clearing equipment, be on the lookout for signs warning spots are temporarily off limits. So if you go outside and can't find the vehicle that you have had parked in a certain spot over the last few weeks, the city says to contact police's non-emergency line to find out which of the neighboring streets your vehicle may have received a friendly tow to. And they also say that this blitz begins tomorrow morning around 6 o'clock and it will last 5 to 7 days. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette is here with her first look at the weekend forecast. Let me guess, snow.
How did you guess that? Is it
just
something?
a lucky guess this 2019, yeah.
Yeah, something about this winter that we've been having. Yeah, there's some snow in the forecast, but what I'm very pleased to be able to say is that it's looking like light snow for us. Different story, our neighbors to the south, but let me just kind of walk you through what's going on in the short term anyway. Overnight tonight, those clouds thickening up. It was nice to have some of that sunshine today, wasn't it? So we will see quite a bit of cloud cover. As you're waking up Saturday, you'll probably be up before 9, but just so you know, there'll be some cloud cover and probably some scattered flurries beginning first and then some light snow moving in. So it is going to be light in nature, but we'll be seeing that through much of the day, the morning and into the afternoon hours before it starts tapering off there as we get towards evening and moving out. Looking at 2 to 4 centimeters, a few pockets could see 5 centimeters. And then into Sunday, yeah, a very significant system, but staying south of us. So we'll likely see some flurries only off of that one. I'll get into a little more detail coming up. Overnight tonight, though, -6. So a little milder, feeling like -11, and tomorrow up to 0 with that light snowfall. Also, when I come back, Mike, we'll take a look at what you can expect in a typical March.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, a security guard suffered smoke inhalation in a mechanical room fire at Ryerson University tonight. Toronto fire crews were called into Church and Dundas Streets just after 8 o'clock. They helped people evacuate the building. The fire was extinguished and the injured security guard was treated by paramedics. Church Street was closed for several hours but has since reopened. The Toronto Winter Brewfest is back for the 4th year in a row, and it brings with it a job you may not have heard of before. Just as wine lovers can look to sommeliers for help picking the right vintage, a cicerone can help you select the right craft beer. Hawaii Fidel talks with one of the few women who are trained to do so.
If you think you don't like beer, you haven't met Lauren Richard.
There's a beer for you, you just haven't found it yet.
Richard is an advanced cicerone, so it's her job to know everything about beer.
So we study a little bit of everything from history, beer ingredients, the brewing process. We help bars with how to curate their programs.
She says she's only one of 3 other advanced cicerones in Canada that are women, and she's happy to see more women joining the industry.
People are getting used to the fact that women are here. There's amazing women brewers all over the province.
Part of her job is working at festivals like this, introducing people to different kinds of beer.
Brewfest is offering not one, not two, but 150 different types of beer. Organizers say one of their main goals is supporting local.
If there's anything we feel that we can do to make sure that we facilitate that and give the product as soon as we can to the festival goers, I'd love to think that it helps them.
The Red Thread Brewery launched 2 years ago in Newmarket. The owner says supporting local businesses benefits the province.
We interact with local farmers, grain farmers, hop farmers. There's no end to it, so it's a huge effect.
Meanwhile, Richard says whether you're into beer or not, the festival has something for you.
There's something for everyone, and also there's an opportunity to get to know beer if you're not a beer drinker.
Toronto Winter Brewfest continues at the Evergreen Brickworks tomorrow. Hawaii Fidel, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up, when her father died, this woman did what she could to honor his final wishes, part of which was to be cremated. But she says she was told her father may not be eligible for cremation. After the break, we'll tell you why not and her warning for others. I have a story now about a man who thought he'd prearranged his funeral. Al Monk wanted to be cremated when he died, but when he passed last month, his family was told the cremation might not be able to happen. As Greg Ross explains, it left his family scrambling at a very difficult time.
Funeral arrangements were the last thing Cindy Monk Fuller thought she would have to worry about when her dad died last month, because they had already been taken care of years earlier by her father.
He was the type of person who never wanted to leave, particularly his wife Helen, with any kind of stress.
In 2012, Al Monk, who was in his early 80s, went to the Highland Funeral Home in Scarborough to sign a prepaid funeral plan agreement. It cost him around $2,200, and his daughter says he was adamant that he be cremated.
So it was important for you to make sure that you carried through with his wishes?
Absolutely. Not only was he my father, but I would carry through with someone's wishes no matter who they were.
Just hours after Al passed, Monk Fuller and her stepmother were at the funeral home finalizing his plans when someone there asked about his medical history.
She said at one point, has your husband ever had any kind of treatment? They call it brachia treatment.
Al had been treated for prostate cancer years earlier, but his wife couldn't recall if doctors performed brachytherapy. It involves implanting dozens of tiny devices called theracedes, which make it possible to target affected areas with higher doses of radiation. But it can also disqualify a person from cremation.
Any body that contains an implant, such as a pacemaker or the TheraSeed, which are very small seeds, radioactive seeds that are implanted into the tumor or near the tumor. Any implants in a body would prevent that body from being cremated.
It's mandated in the Funeral, Burial and Cremation Services Act of Ontario to protect cremation operators from being exposed to radiation.
Every crematorium in Toronto was refusing to cremate my father.
This just added stress to an already difficult time for the family. Monk Fuller says she was already frustrated at the funeral home for not making this clear years earlier. There was nothing about implants mentioned in the contract Al signed.
If you're sitting down with a client and you're taking their money, I think it's incumbent upon you to have the correct information.
We reached out to the funeral home, and a representative told us asking that kind of question or having that within our agreement is not part of our scope. Our role is to really provide families with guidance in creating funeral and memorializations that are meaningful to them and their loved ones. Monk Fuller had to get in touch with Al's doctor to find out what treatment he had.
The MD was nice enough to look up all the records and called us back and said no, Al had only had straight radiation treatment.
In the end, they were able to follow through with Al's wishes. The family is hoping that by telling their story, they may help prevent another family from going through the same issue in the future. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, we're going to take you on a trip through time. A new exhibit at the Toronto Reference Library looks at how the hip-hop scene in the city has evolved and the way it's influenced music around the world.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
An exhibit at the Toronto Reference Library on now looks at the evolution of the city's hip-hop scene. The exhibit is a collaboration with Northside Hip Hop Archives. Talia Ricci tells us what it's all about.
For the record, what we're seeing all throughout here is an attempt really to look at the origins of hip-hop culture in Toronto by spending time with some of the original sound systems, some of the original DJs. We track some of the early records, some of the early vinyls, which you'll see in some of these cases, and we track the progress of Toronto as a hip-hop scene and its growth.
And I think this is probably a pretty big name for most people.
Everybody knows Maestro Fresh West, and this album actually is, this kid can't be from Canada.
This jam is amplified, so just glide and let your backbone slide.
Well, the first thing you'll see when you come to For the Record is we have this huge map that is from 1965 Toronto, and it's been bombed, so graffiti's been put on it by one of the city's most illustrious graffiti artists, Elixir. And what we ask people to do is literally map for us places where you heard these sound systems play and where these DJs played. We have these listening stations, and these are college radio shows. And these radio shows were the main outlet for music in the 90s.
Do you think people would be surprised to learn how this music was accessed in the 80s and 90s compared to how people consume music today?
I think people would definitely be surprised on how you would experience hip-hop, because it wasn't on the radio and because it wasn't on television. You had to go to an event, you had to go to a party. So the DJs and the sound systems were your main access point to experiencing this new thing called hip-hop.
The sound system started setting the trend in the downtown clubs, from the Twilight Zone, what was known for such a nice sound system. People from all walk of life will come to Toronto and play. The government, all of these places are now cultivating in the sound of the sound system from the 80s and the 90s.
Why are you excited to share this exhibit with people?
It's really about this present moment and how a city like Toronto could cultivate the Drakes, how a city of Toronto could cultivate the Boy Wonders, how we could cultivate these superstars on a stage globally where they're successful because we've had this community that has nourished these talents.
Well, the Raptors hosting the Trailblazers tonight. Toronto looking good early on. Kawhi Leonard powers to the rim for a nice lay-in. He would lead the way with 18 points in the first half. Second right here, nice three-pointer going in there. Well, second half, Jeremy Lin drives in and dishes to Lowry for his lay-in. Toronto up by 14 at this point, but Portland would battle all the way back. Damian Lillard goes for a three and initiates contact. It's a foul call. Kyle Lowry not happy about that. He would go on to hit all three fouls and tie the game, but never fear, Kawhi is here. He gives the Raptors a last-minute win. They take the game 119-117. Colette is back with her extended look at the weather forecast, and I think I speak for many when I say we're glad to see the end of February. So what's March hold for us?
Yes, we're getting closer to spring, right? We know it's coming in this month on the 20th. Well, I thought we'd have a look at what a typical March is like, meaning having a look at our climate averages, all right? So for this month, the average daytime high, this is if you average it out across the month, is 4.6. So what that means is for the beginning of the month, today, it's around 1, almost 1 degree. And by the end of the month, we're almost up to 8 degrees for a daytime high on average. Then we got to ask about snowfall, right? 17.7 centimeters on average is what we would see for March. Let's see how this one goes, but lots of rainfall too as we're getting closer to spring there, so 32.6 millimeters in a typical month like this we would see. All right, a few systems that are coming through this weekend. Well, one coming through and one staying south of us. That is the track. So into tomorrow, I do have that light snow through the day, and then moving out into the evening hours, a couple of centimeters certainly possible through here until it's gone. Could be a slight bit of drizzle, mixing icy drizzle in there. Mostly it's going to be just some light snow. I want to show you just how lucky we are in terms of another Texas low moving through, but this one looks like it's headed towards the eastern seaboard and staying south of us into Sunday. I'm bringing some flurries into the forecast, some clouds, especially into the afternoon, otherwise kind of a mix of sun and cloud, but we should keep the heavy snow on the other side of the border if this keeps the track that it looks like it's going to be on. So very nice for us to kind of dodge that bullet. We've had enough snow, have we not? Southwestern Ontario overnight tonight, a look at what you're going to see, -5 with that cloud cover increasing. Light snow here, 1 to 3 centimeters, and some mild temperatures. Okay, maybe they're just really seasonal, a little below, but it's nice to see temperatures above the freezing mark. Overnight tonight, it will feel like -11 around the GTA, although the numbers will be better than that. And then tomorrow afternoon, there's a look at your highs right around the freezing mark with that light snow falling. Then as we go into Sunday, a little bit cooler, -3, the flurries from the system to the south of us. However, what I do want you to note is that here we are, it is March, we're getting closer to spring, but look at these numbers. Overnight lows -15, by Wednesday night -21, and daytime highs running well below seasonal. So the beginning of March, the next couple days not bad, Mike. After that, it's looking pretty chilly.
So we avoid that big snow or potential snow, but we pay for it with some colder weather.
Yes, it's one or the other, right?
All right. Thanks a lot, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, it took 91 days and 4 hours, but a father and daughter team from Burlington finally made it to land after rowing across the Atlantic Ocean. John Beeden and his 20-year-old daughter Libby left the shore of Portugal at the end of November. Now, John has rowed the oceans before. He was the first person to row nonstop solo from North America to Australia. But this was Libby's first big row, however. They took turns at the oars, rowing around the clock and taking naps in the boat's very tiny cabin. They had a scare when a wave nearly collapsed their boat 2 weeks in, but this morning, 6,000 kilometers later, the two reached Antigua. The Beedens spoke to CBC today, saying they are looking forward to a hot shower and some fresh fruit. What an incredible story. No doubt they need that break. Spending Christmas, New Year's, everything at sea. Well-deserved rest. Well, there's an interesting story to tell you about on Quirks and Quarks tomorrow, a potential breakthrough in carbon sequestration. Researchers from Australia say they've developed a way to convert carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels and turn them back into something not very different from coal, which can then be buried without fear of it escaping into the atmosphere again. You can hear that tomorrow at noon on CBC Radio 1. I'll see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend.